The scanner made a sound Daeho had never heard before, a sharp electronic scream that made everyone in the security checkpoint stop and look. Daeho had been checking passengers for 15 years at Nexus Station. He knew every beep, every buzz, every warning sound the machines could make. This was something new. The man standing in the scanner looked ordinary enough, maybe 35 years old with dark hair and tired eyes. His clothes were simple, a gray shirt and brown pants that looked like they had seen better days. His hands were rough, like someone who worked with tools. Nothing special about him at all, but the scanner was going crazy. Red lights flashed across Daeho's screen. Warning messages popped up faster than he could read them. Then the main display showed something that made his blood run cold. A single line of text in bright red letters, Planet Killer Endurer, Clearance Level Omega. Daeho stared at the screen. In 15 years, he had never seen an Omega clearance. He did not even know such a thing existed. The highest clearance he had ever seen was Beta, and that was for important military officers. The man in the scanner seemed to notice the delay. He looked at Daeho through the glass and gave a small nod. There was something in his eyes, not fear or worry, but a kind of understanding. Like he expected this to happen. "Sir, please step out of the scanner," Daeho said into his microphone. His voice sounded strange even to himself. The man stepped out slowly. Up close, Daeho could see that his face was weathered, like someone who had spent too much time in harsh sunlight. There were small scars on his hands and arms. Old ones mostly healed. "Is there a problem?" the man asked. His voice was quiet but steady. "I need to see your identification again," Daeho said, though he already had it. Kim Tae-sung, age 34, from the outer colonies. The passenger manifest said he came from a refugee ship called Haven's Rest. Just another person running from the war, like thousands of others who passed through Nexus Station every day, except for that impossible clearance level. Daeho touched his communication device. "Control, this is Checkpoint 7. I need a supervisor down here immediately." "What's the issue, Daeho?" came the reply. "I have a passenger with an Omega clearance." "I don't know what that means." There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Then, "Did you say Omega?" "Yes. Do not let that passenger leave. Escort him to holding room 3. We're sending Admiral Park down right now." Daeho looked at Kim Tae-sung. The man did not seem surprised by any of this. If anything, he looked resigned, like someone who had been expecting bad news for a long time. "Sir, I need you to come with me," Daeho said. Tae-sung nodded. "I understand." They walked through the station in silence. Nexus Station was huge, a massive wheel spinning in space big enough to hold 500,000 people. The corridors were always busy with travelers, traders, and workers from 100 different worlds. But today, Daeho barely noticed any of it. His mind was focused on the man walking beside him, Planet Killer Endurer. What did that even mean? Holding room 3 was small and plain. Just a table, 2 chairs, and a door that locked from the outside. Tae-sung sat down without being asked and folded his hands on the table. He looked calm, but Daeho noticed his fingers were trembling slightly. "Can I ask you something?" Daeho said. "Sure. What's a Planet Killer Endurer?" Tae-sung was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was very soft. Someone who lived through something that should have killed them. Someone who watched their whole world die and somehow survived to tell about it. Before Daeho could ask more questions, the door opened. Admiral Park Ji-woo walked in, followed by 2 other officers Daeho did not recognize. Park was a tall woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She had been in charge of Nexus Station for as long as Daeho had worked there. "Mr. Kim," she said, sitting down across from Tae-sung. "I'm Admiral Park. I've been trying to access your file, but most of it is classified above my clearance level. That's very unusual." "I imagine it is," Tae-sung replied. "What I can see is that you're listed as the sole survivor of Kepler 442b. That planet was destroyed 18 months ago. The official report says it was hit by an asteroid." Tae-sung's jaw tightened. "The official report is wrong. Then tell me what really happened." Tae-sung closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was pain there, old pain that had never fully healed. "I was working in the deep mines when it started," he said. "The ground began to shake, but not like an earthquake. This was different. The rock around us started to change, like it was becoming something else." He paused as if the words were hard to find. Then the alert started. Emergency broadcast saying something was attacking the planet. But it wasn't ships or bombs. It was something that made the planet itself come apart from the inside. Admiral Park leaned forward. What do you mean, come apart? The core started breaking down. Not exploding, breaking down. Like someone was taking apart the basic pieces that held everything together. The gravity went crazy. Parts of the surface just disappeared into nothing. Other parts turned into things that shouldn't exist. Tae-sung rolled up his sleeves, showing more scars on his arms. Then he unbuttoned his shirt. Daeho heard Admiral Park gasp. Across Tae-sung's chest and back were scars unlike anything Daeho had ever seen. They were not random cuts or burns. They formed patterns, geometric shapes that seemed to shift when he looked at them directly. I was trapped in the mines for 17 hours while the planet died around me. Tae-sung continued. The tunnels kept collapsing and reforming. The air itself felt wrong. I should have died 100 times over. But you didn't, Admiral Park said quietly. No, I didn't. And now I can sense things that other people can't. When certain technologies are being used, when reality is being bent, Admiral Park stood up quickly. I need to make some calls. Mr. Kim, I'm going to ask you to stay here a little longer. There are people who need to hear your story. As she left the room, Daeho could hear her speaking urgently into her communicator. Words like immediate priority and contact Earth Command and possible game changer. Tae-sung sat quietly, buttoning his shirt back up. He looked tired but also relieved, as if he had been carrying a heavy weight for a long time and had finally been able to set it down. Outside the small room, Nexus Station continued its normal routine. Ships docked and departed. Passengers hurried through the corridors. Traders made deals. Life went on as it always had, but Daeho had the feeling that everything was about to change. The secure briefing room was deep inside Nexus Station, behind 3 sets of locked doors and 2 security checkpoints. Admiral Park Ji-woo had called an emergency meeting. The people sitting around the long metal table represented the best minds on the station. Dr. Lee So-jin, the chief xenobiologist, was studying her tablet with intense focus. Her specialty was alien life forms, but lately she had been spending more time studying alien weapons. Choi Min-ho, the tactical analyst, was reviewing battle reports from the outer colonies. His job was to find patterns in how the enemy fought. Dr. Kang Hee-jin, the station's head doctor, was there because Admiral Park had requested a medical expert. They were all waiting for Kim Tae-sung. When he walked into the room, accompanied by 2 security guards, the atmosphere changed. Everyone could feel it, the weight of terrible experience that followed him like a shadow. He sat down at the end of the table and waited. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Park began. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. 3 days ago, we received confirmation that the hegemony has destroyed 17 more human colonies using their planet-killer weapon. The death toll is now over 2 billion people. Dr. Lee looked up from her tablet. Do we know anything new about how the weapon works? That's why Mr. Kim is here, the Admiral replied. He's the only human being who has survived a direct attack by what the hegemony calls the World Render. Choi Min-ho frowned. I thought Kepler 442b was destroyed by an asteroid impact. That's what we told the public, Admiral Park said. The truth is that we had no idea what really happened. Until now. All eyes turned to Tae-sung. He took a deep breath and began to speak. The hegemony doesn't destroy planets the way you might think, he said. They don't blow them up or burn them. They unmake them. What does that mean? Dr. Kang asked. They have a device, the World Render. It looks like a massive crystal, maybe a kilometer long. It phases through solid matter like it's not there. When it reaches the planet's core, it does something to the basic building blocks of matter itself. Tae-sung paused, as if gathering his thoughts. Imagine if you could reach into the foundation of a building and start removing the support beams one by one. That's what the World Render does. But to the atoms that make up the planet, it breaks the bonds that hold everything together. Dr. Lee leaned forward. That should be impossible. The energy required to disrupt atomic bonds on that scale. I know it sounds impossible, Tae-sung said. I watched it happen. The ground under my feet stopped being solid rock and became something else, something that existed in too many dimensions at once. The gravity went crazy because mass itself was becoming unstable. Choi Min-ho was taking notes rapidly. How long does the process take? About 20 hours from start to finish. The World Render phases down through the planet's layers, breaking down matter as it goes. When it reaches the core, the whole planet just comes apart. Not in an explosion. More like it forgets how to be a planet. And you survived 17 hours of this? Dr. Kang asked, her voice full of disbelief. Tae-sung nodded. I was in the deep mining tunnels when it started. 3 kilometers underground. When the surface began to break down, the tunnels should have collapsed immediately. But the world render's effect is strange. Sometimes matter becomes more solid than it should be. Sometimes it becomes less solid. The tunnels kept changing around me. He rolled up his sleeves again, showing the geometric scars. These marks, they're from direct contact with the distortion field. The space around me kept folding and unfolding. Reality was bending. I should have been torn apart or crushed or just erased. But somehow I held together. Dr. Kang moved closer to examine the scars. May I? She asked, reaching toward his arm. Tae-sung nodded. When her fingers touched the scarred skin, she jerked her hand back with a gasp. What is it? Admiral Park asked. The tissue feels different. Not just scarred, changed. At a cellular level. Dr. Kang looked amazed and frightened at the same time. I need to run some tests. There's more, Tae-sung said quietly. Ever since Kepler 442b, I can sense things. When certain types of technology are active, I feel it, like an itch in my brain. Last week, when I was on the refugee ship, I felt that same itch. Something on this station is similar to the world render. The room went very quiet. Admiral Park and Choi Min-ho exchanged glances. We have a captured hegemony scout ship in the research bay, Admiral Park admitted. We've been trying to understand their technology. That's what I'm sensing, Tae-sung said. It's not active, but it's there. The same type of exotic matter manipulation that the world render uses. Dr. Lee was practically vibrating with excitement. This is incredible. You're describing dimensional manipulation on a scale we've never seen. But if you can sense it, then maybe we can develop countermeasures, Choi Min-ho finished. Admiral Park stood up. Dr. Kang, I want a complete medical workup on Mr. Kim. Find out exactly what happened to him at the cellular level. Dr. Lee, work with him to understand how he can detect hegemony technology. Choi, start thinking about how we might use this tactically. Admiral, Tae-sung said, his voice urgent. There's something else you need to know. On the refugee ship, people were talking. Rumors from the outer colonies. The hegemony is gathering a massive fleet. More world renders than they've ever used at once. How many? Admiral Park asked. At least 50. Maybe more. And they're all heading for the core worlds. Earth, New Shanghai, Titan Base, they call it the Great Silencing. They want to end the human problem once and for all. The weight of this information settled over the room like a heavy blanket. 50 world renders. Enough to destroy every major human world simultaneously. How long do we have? Choi Min-ho asked. The ships I saw were moving slowly, but they had a head start. Maybe 3 weeks. Maybe less. Admiral Park was already moving toward the communication panel. I need to contact Earth Command immediately. And the colonial governments. If the hegemony is planning a coordinated attack... Admiral, Tae-sung interrupted. Standard weapons won't work against the world renders. They exist partially outside normal space. You can't shoot something that isn't entirely there. Then what do you suggest? Tae-sung looked down at his scarred hands. I don't know yet. But I think the answer might be inside me. Whatever happened to me on Kepler 442b, it changed something fundamental. Maybe that change is the key to fighting back. Dr. Kang was already preparing her medical scanner. We need to understand exactly what you've become, she said. Because right now you might be humanity's only hope. As the meeting broke up, everyone hurried off to their assigned tasks. But Tae-sung remained seated, staring at his hands. He had carried the weight of Kepler 442b's destruction for 18 months. Believing he was just a lucky survivor, now he was beginning to understand that his survival might not have been luck at all. It might have been evolution. And if humanity was going to survive the coming storm, they would need to evolve too. Dr. Kang Hee-jin had been a doctor for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like Kim Tae-sung's test results. She stared at the medical scanner display, checking the readings for the 4th time. The numbers didn't make sense, but they were consistent. This is impossible, she muttered, adjusting the scanner settings again. Tae-sung lay on the examination table, patient and still. What are you seeing, doctor? Your cellular structure has been fundamentally altered. Not damaged, changed. At the genetic level. She pointed to the screen. Look at this. Your neurons are conducting electrical impulses at twice the normal rate. Your brain tissue shows quantum entanglement patterns that shouldn't exist in biological matter. Han Woo-jin, the station's chief engineer, looked up from his own instruments. He had been called in to help understand the technical aspects of what had happened to Tai-sung. The readings match what we're getting from the captured hegemony ship. Some kind of quantum resonance. Can you explain that in simple terms? Tai-sung asked. Dr. Kang sat down beside the examination table. Your brain has been tuned to the same frequency that hegemony technology operates on. Like a radio that can pick up their signal. That's how you can sense their devices. But there's more, Han added, checking his scanner. The resonance isn't just passive. You're actually interfering with their technology on a quantum level. When I brought a piece of hegemony equipment near you, its efficiency dropped by 12%. Tai-sung sat up slowly. I'm disrupting their technology just by being close to it? It appears so. Whatever happened to you on Kepler 442b? It didn't just let you survive the world renders effect. It made you immune to it. Dr. Kang was still studying the medical readouts. The question is whether this change can be replicated in other people. If we could give more humans this resistance, we'd have a fighting chance, Han finished. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Yu Soo-young, the station's communications officer. She looked worried and was carrying a data pad with urgent messages. Dr. Kang, I need to speak with Mr. Kim immediately. We've intercepted some hegemony transmissions that he needs to hear. Tai-sung stood up. What kind of transmissions? Soo-young activated her data pad and alien voices filled the room. The language was harsh and guttural, like rocks grinding together. But the translation scrolled across the screen in human text. Great silencing proceeds as planned. 57 world renders now in position around primary human settlements. Secondary targets identified for follow-up cleansing. The voices continued, discussing logistics and timing. The casual way they talked about destroying billions of lives made everyone in the room feel sick. There's more, Soo-young said, skipping to another section. Humans showing unexpected resistance on outer worlds. Some survivors developing immunity to dimensional manipulation. Recommend acceleration of great silencing timeline. Tai-sung went very still. They know. They know that some humans are developing resistance. How is that possible? Dr. Kang asked. There must be other survivors. People who lived through world render attacks and changed the way I did. Tai-sung began pacing. The hegemony is scared. That's why they're moving up their timeline. Han was working rapidly on his tablet, running calculations. If multiple humans have developed this resistance and if we can understand how it works, we could create a defense system, Dr. Kang said, excitement growing in her voice. Something that uses the same quantum interference effect. But we're running out of time, Soo-young warned. The transmissions indicate they're going to begin the attacks within days, not weeks. Tai-sung stopped pacing and looked at each of them in turn. Then we need to work faster. Dr. Kang, can you map the changes in my brain precisely enough to replicate them? It would be dangerous. The process that changed you was traumatic and unpredictable. We'd essentially need to expose people to controlled dimensional distortions. Some people might not survive, Han added grimly. And if we don't try, everyone dies anyway. Tai-sung replied. I volunteer to be the test subject. If we can figure out how to trigger the resistance safely. Dr. Kang shook her head. You've already been changed. We need to test this on someone with normal human brain chemistry. The room fell silent as everyone realized what that meant. They were talking about human experimentation with unknown and potentially lethal technology, the kind of thing that violated every medical and ethical guideline they had sworn to uphold. I'll do it, came a voice from the doorway. They turned to see Captain Bae Dong-hyun, one of the station's military officers. I heard about what you're working on. My unit volunteers. Captain, you don't understand the risks, Dr. Kang began. I understand that Earth is going to be destroyed in a matter of days unless we find a way to stop it, Bae replied firmly. My soldiers understand that too. We've all lost people to the hegemony. If there's a chance to hit back, we'll take it. Tai-sung walked over to the captain. The process I went through, it felt like dying, like being torn apart and put back together wrong. Some of your people might not make it. Some of them definitely won't make it if we do nothing, Bae said. At least this way their deaths might mean something. Dr. Kang looked around the room at the determined faces. We'll need Admiral Park's authorization for something like this. I'll get it, Soo-young said, already heading for the door. She's been waiting for any kind of breakthrough. Han was back to his calculations. If this works, we'll need to scale it up rapidly. Create devices that can project the same quantum interference effect across entire star systems. One step at a time, Taesung said. First, we find out if other humans can develop the resistance. Then we figure out how to weaponize it. As the team scattered to begin their preparations, Taesung remained in the medical bay. He looked at his reflection in the scanner's screen, seeing the scars that marked him as something new. Something that shouldn't exist. For 18 months, he had thought of himself as a broken survivor. Someone who had lost everything and barely escaped with his life. But now he was beginning to understand the truth. He wasn't broken. He was evolved. And if they could help more humans evolve the same way, the hegemony was about to learn something important about the species they were trying to exterminate. Humans didn't just survive the impossible. They adapted to it, they learned from it, and then they used it to fight back. The process would be dangerous. People would die. But for the first time since Kepler 442b had been destroyed, Taesung felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Outside the medical bay, alarms began to sound. Emergency messages flashed on every screen throughout the station. Long-range sensors had detected the hegemony fleet approaching the core worlds. The Great Silencing had begun, but humanity wasn't going to go quietly into extinction. Not anymore. They had found their weapon. Now they just had to learn how to use it before it was too late. The asteroid research facility was hidden deep in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Dr. Nam Ki-soo had been running secret experiments there for 3 years, trying to understand how hegemony technology worked. When Admiral Park's message arrived, he knew his isolation was about to end. The transport ship carrying Kim Taesung and the team from Nexus Station docked 12 hours later. Dr. Nam met them at the airlock, a thin man with wild hair and clothes that looked like he had slept in them for days. "You're the planet killer survivor," he said to Taesung without any introduction. "I've been waiting to meet someone like you." "Someone like me?" Taesung asked. "Someone who has been directly exposed to dimensional manipulation and lived. I've been studying hegemony technology, but I've never been able to test its effects on living tissue. Too dangerous." Dr. Nam led them through corridors carved from solid rock. The facility was larger than it appeared from outside, with laboratories and workshops built into the asteroid itself. In the main lab, pieces of alien technology were scattered across work tables. Crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them, metal that felt warm to the touch despite having no power source. "This is everything we've recovered from hegemony ships over the past 5 years, Dr. Nam explained. "Most of it we can't even turn on safely. But with Mr. Kim here..." Taesung approached one of the work tables. Even before he got close, he could feel the familiar itch in his brain. "This piece is active," he said, pointing to a small crystal device. "Low power, but definitely running." Dr. Nam's eyes lit up. "We thought that one was completely dead. It hasn't shown any energy readings for months. It's there, very faint, but I can feel it." Han Woo-jin was already setting up his scanning equipment. If Taesung can detect inactive hegemony technology, he might be able to help us understand how it works. Dr. Kang moved to prepare the medical bay. "First, we need to run the resistance procedure on Captain Bay's volunteers. We can't wait any longer." Captain Bay Dong-hyun had brought 12 soldiers with him. They stood at attention in the main corridor, ready for whatever was asked of them. Taesung looked at their young faces and felt a weight of responsibility that made his chest tight. "You all understand what we're asking," he told them. "The process that changed me happened during a planetary destruction event. We're going to try to recreate a small part of that in a controlled environment. Some of you might not survive." Sergeant Shin Yoon-ji, the unit's medic, spoke for the group. "Sir, we've all lost family to the hegemony. My entire home colony was destroyed last year. If there's a chance to save Earth and the other core worlds, we'll take any risk." Dr. Nam had been working on the exposure device for days. It looked like a metal chamber surrounded by crystalline projectors salvaged from hegemony ships. "The theory is sound," he explained. "We create a localized dimensional distortion field, expose the subject to it briefly, then monitor their neural response." "How briefly?" Dr. Kang asked. 30 seconds for the first test. If their brain shows the same quantum entanglement patterns as Mr. Kim, we know it's working." Taesung stepped forward. "I should be the first test subject. I've already been changed. If something goes wrong..." "No," Captain Bay said firmly. "You're too valuable. If this kills you, we lose our only working example of the resistance." The argument was settled when Corporal Lim Jae-wook volunteered to go first. He was young, maybe 22, with steady hands and calm eyes. As he stepped into the exposure chamber, everyone held their breath, activating dimensional distortion in 3, 2, 1. The crystalline projectors came alive with an eerie blue light. Inside the chamber, space began to bend. Lim's body wavered like a reflection in moving water. For 30 seconds that felt like hours, reality twisted around him. When the field shut down, Lim collapsed to his knees. Blood ran from his nose, but he was conscious and breathing. Dr. Kang rushed to scan his brain activity. "It's working," she said, amazement in her voice. "His neural patterns are already changing. Not as dramatically as Tae-sung's, but definitely shifting toward quantum entanglement." Over the next 6 hours, they exposed all 12 volunteers to the dimensional distortion field. 9 survived the process. 3 died instantly when their nervous systems couldn't handle the quantum changes. Sergeant Shin held each one as they passed, promising their families would know they died as heroes. The survivors all showed different levels of resistance. Some, like Corporal Lim, developed strong quantum sensitivity. Others had weaker but still measurable changes. All of them could sense hegemony technology to some degree. "It's not perfect," Dr. Nam admitted as he studied the results, "but it proves the concept works. We can give humans resistance to dimensional manipulation. Now we need to scale it up," Han said. "Create devices that can project the same interference effect across large areas." Tae-sung was working with the survivors, teaching them to recognize and interpret what they were sensing. "The feeling gets stronger when the technology is more active," he explained. "A world render in operation feels like fire in your brain. You'll know it immediately." While they worked, intelligence reports continued to arrive. The hegemony fleet was moving into position around Earth and the major colonies. Long-range sensors showed 57 world render ships taking up orbital positions. The attack could begin at any moment. Dr. Nam had been working without sleep for days, designing what he called quantum mirrors. "If we can't stop the world renders from firing," he reasoned, "maybe we can reflect their attacks back at them." The first prototype was built into an asteroid mining ship. The quantum interference projectors were mounted where the mining lasers used to be. When they tested it against a small piece of hegemony technology, the results were dramatic. "The exotic matter manipulation field is completely disrupted," Han reported, studying his instruments. "Not just blocked, reversed. The technology is trying to affect itself instead of its target." "Will it work against a full-scale world render?" Captain Bay asked. "We won't know until we try it in combat," Dr. Nam replied. "But the theory is solid. If we can position ships with quantum mirrors around the planets being attacked, we might be able to turn the world renders against the hegemony fleet." Tae-sung finished. The plan was desperate and untested, but it was the only chance they had. Dr. Nam began converting more ships while the survivors of the resistance procedure practiced using their new abilities. They would need to coordinate the defense, using their quantum sensitivity to detect when the world renders were about to fire. As they worked, news arrived that made everyone stop what they were doing. The hegemony had sent a message to all human worlds. It was broadcast on every communication frequency, in perfect human language. "People of the human species, your time of expansion is over. You have spread too far and grown too quickly. You threaten the natural order of the galaxy. Tomorrow, at the moment your home star reaches its highest point above your primary world, the great silencing will begin. Your colonies will be unmade. Your homeworld will follow. This is not punishment. This is necessity. You will be remembered as a species that burned brightly but briefly." The message ended, leaving silence throughout the facility. Everyone looked at each other, understanding that they had less than 24 hours to prepare. "How many quantum mirror ships can we get ready in time?" Tae-sung asked. 12, Dr. Nam replied. "Maybe 15 if we work through the night. Against 57 world renders? We'll have to make them count." As the team scattered to make final preparations, Tae-sung found himself alone in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the hegemony fleet was preparing to destroy everything humanity had built. Billions of people were going about their lives, not knowing that tomorrow might be their last day. But for the first time since Kepler 442b, Tae-sung didn't feel helpless. The scars across his chest no longer felt like marks of trauma. They felt like badges of survival. Proof that humans could endure the impossible and come back stronger. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn something new about humanity. They would discover that the species marked for extinction had one final surprise waiting. The hunt was about to become a fight. The alarm that woke Kim Tae-sung felt different from all the others. This wasn't a drill or a system malfunction. This was the sound of humanity's final hour beginning. All hands to battle stations, came the announcement over the facility's communication system. Hegemony Fleet has begun attack runs on Earth, New Shanghai Colony, and Titan Base. World render weapons are powering up. Tae-sung rolled out of his bunk and was dressed in seconds. Around him, the facility buzzed with controlled chaos. The quantum mirror ships were launching as fast as the docking bays could cycle them out. Each ship carried a crew trained in the new resistance technology and a desperate hope that their untested weapons would work. In the command center, Dr. Nam Ki-soo was coordinating the defense from multiple screens showing data from across human space. The news was terrifying and immediate. 17 world renders are in position around Earth, he reported as Tae-sung joined him. 23 around New Shanghai. The rest are spread across the smaller colonies. They're beginning the dimensional phase-down sequence. On the main display, long-range sensors showed the massive crystalline ships of the Hegemony Fleet. Each world render was over a kilometer long, shaped like a twisted spear that seemed to bend space around itself. As they watched, the alien weapons began to glow with that familiar blue light that made Tae-sung's scars ache. Our ships are in position, Captain Bae Dong-hyun reported from the communications station. Quantum mirror systems are online and ready. Remember, Tae-sung said into his headset, speaking to all the human crews now facing the most powerful weapons in the galaxy, you'll feel the world renders charging up before they fire. Trust that feeling. When the burning starts in your head, that means they're about to unleash hell. That's when you hit them with everything you have. The first attack came at Earth. The Hegemony world renders began their descent toward the planet's core, phasing through matter like it was empty space. The familiar blue distortions started to appear around the planet as reality itself began to break down. But this time, humanity was ready. Mirror ships, engage now, Tae-sung commanded. 15 quantum mirror vessels opened fire simultaneously. Their weapons were unlike anything humanity had ever built. Crystalline projectors that turned the Hegemony's own dimensional manipulation against them. The blue distortion fields around Earth suddenly reversed, creating feedback loops that made space itself scream. 3 Hegemony world renders simply stopped existing. The dimensional reversal tore them apart at the quantum level, scattering their matter across multiple dimensions. The remaining ships around Earth tried to retreat, but the mirror ships followed, pressing their advantage. New Shanghai is reporting similar success, Dr. Nam called out, his voice full of amazement. 8 world renders destroyed, the rest retreating. But the victory was not complete. At Titan Base, something went wrong. Half the mirror ships were destroyed when one of their quantum projectors overloaded. Without sufficient coverage, 2 world renders reached Titan's core and began the unmaking process. Tae-sung watched in horror as the gas giant's largest moon simply faded out of existence over the course of 20 minutes. Not exploded or shattered, just gradually became less real until there was nothing left but empty space where millions of people had lived. Titan Base is gone, came the report from the surviving ships. We're sorry. We couldn't stop them all. The loss hit everyone hard, but there was no time to mourn. The Hegemony was regrouping for a second wave, and this time they would be ready for humanity's new weapons. They're adapting, Dr. Nam observed, studying the alien fleet movements. Look at how they're positioning the world renders now. Wider spacing, overlapping fields. They're trying to make it harder for our mirror ships to get close. Then we get closer anyway, Tae-sung said grimly. He was already moving toward the docking bay where his own ship waited. I'm going to Earth. Tae-sung, that's suicide, Dr. Kang called after him. The quantum distortion fields around the planet are getting stronger. Even with your resistance, I'm the most sensitive human to dimensional manipulation that we know of, he replied. If anyone can get close enough to coordinate a direct assault on the World Render Command ship, it's me. Captain Bae joined him. My remaining soldiers are coming with you. So am I, Dr. Nam added, grabbing a portable version of his quantum projector. If we're going to end this, we need to take out their flagship. That's the ship coordinating all the world render attacks. The journey to Earth took 6 hours at maximum burn. During the flight, Tae-sung could feel the dimensional distortions getting stronger as they approached the battle zone. His scars burned like fire, but he pushed through the pain. This was what he had survived Kepler 442b for, this moment. When they dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, the scene was unlike anything in human history. Hundreds of ships were engaged in combat around the planet. Human vessels darted between massive hegemony cruisers, their quantum mirrors creating brilliant flashes of reversed energy. The space around Earth rippled and twisted as competing dimensional fields clashed. There, Tae-sung said, pointing at the largest hegemony ship. It was 5 times the size of a world render, shaped like a massive crown of crystal and metal. That's their command vessel. If we can take it out, the world renders will lose coordination, Dr. Nam finished. Without central control, they can't maintain the precise positioning needed for planetary destruction. Their ship shook as hegemony fighters engaged them. Corporal Lim, one of the survivors of the resistance procedure, was piloting. His enhanced senses let him dodge attacks that normal human reflexes couldn't handle. "I can feel their weapons targeting us," he reported. "They're trying to lock onto our dimensional signature, but it keeps slipping away." That was the advantage of the resistance. Humans who had been changed by exposure to dimensional distortion became partially invisible to hegemony targeting systems. They existed in a quantum state that the aliens' technology couldn't quite grasp. As they approached the command ship, Tae-sung felt something new. The burning sensation in his head was different. Not the focused pain of a world render, but something broader and more complex. "There's someone on that ship," he said suddenly. "Someone like me. Someone who survived dimensional distortion and was changed by it." "That's impossible," Dr. Nam said. "We're the first species to develop resistance to their technology." "No," Tae-sung realized, understanding flooding through him. "We're not the first. The hegemony has been using world renders for thousands of years. There must have been other survivors from other species. They've been keeping them, studying them, maybe even forcing them to help coordinate attacks." The implications were staggering. If the hegemony had prisoners with dimensional resistance, that explained how they could operate world renders so precisely. They were using enslaved survivors as living computers. "We have to get on that ship," Tae-sung said with new determination. "If there are others like me being held prisoner." Their ship shuddered as they entered the command vessel's docking bay. The internal atmosphere was breathable but felt wrong somehow, too heavy with a metallic taste that made their teeth ache. As they moved through the corridors, Tae-sung's scars burned brighter with each step. The ship's interior was a maze of crystal formations and metal passages that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Several times they had to stop while Dr. Nam recalibrated their quantum projector to account for the spatial distortions. They found the control center at the ship's heart. It was a vast chamber filled with crystalline computing systems and holographic displays showing the positions of every world render in the attack fleet. And at the center of it all, connected to the ship's systems by cables and tubes, were dozens of beings from different species. All of them showed the same geometric scarring that marked dimensional distortion survivors. All of them had been enslaved by the hegemony and forced to use their resistance to coordinate the destruction of their own people. "My God," Dr. Kang whispered as she examined the prisoners. "They're still alive. Barely, but alive." Tae-sung approached the control systems, his enhanced senses screaming warnings. "I can interface with this," he said. "My quantum entanglement is strong enough to take control of the world render network." "Do it," Captain Bay urged, while his soldiers held the entrance against approaching hegemony forces. Tae-sung placed his hands on the central control crystal. Immediately, his consciousness expanded across the entire fleet. He could feel every world render, sense their charge levels, understand their targeting parameters, and he began to change them, one by one. He redirected the world renders away from human planets and toward the hegemony fleet itself. The aliens had created the ultimate weapon for planetary destruction, but they had never considered what would happen if that weapon was turned against them. The first world render struck a hegemony cruiser and simply erased it from existence. The second took out an entire squadron of fighters. By the time the alien commanders realized what was happening, it was too late. "All world renders are now targeting hegemony vessels," Tae-sung reported, his voice strained from the mental effort. "I can hold control for maybe 10 more minutes." That's enough, Dr. Nam said, working frantically to free the enslaved survivors.